All right, folks, welcome back. We're taking a look at this song called Freak Beat by the Sunday Mourners. They're a local to Orange County band. Where are they from?
Orange.
Yeah, you know more about them than I do, so maybe you should introduce them.
Sunday Mourners. We got Max, Quinn, Z, and Casey. And they're a four-piece rock band from Orange. And they're just incredible people, incredibly talented individuals. And I'm very thankful that they reached out to me to see if I could mix their music. So it's been a great relationship ever since, and I've been able to work on a lot of their music. So
Yeah, I saw them. I ran sound for them once. They played in Anaheim, and I ran sound for their show, and I really dug their music. So I was like, oh, cool. So eventually I ended up playing with them. So I'm in the band Death Will Bring Change, and we played on the same bill together, so that was nice. And David over here happened to engineer one of the songs called Freak Beat, which I really enjoy that song. So I think he told me he somehow mentioned that he did engineering for that song, and I was like, oh snap, that's so cool, I love that song. So I decided, hey, let's go check it out. I want to see like the session and what like kind of a deep dive on what he did on the decisions he made throughout the mix. I would ask recording questions, but he didn't record it. He only mixed and mastered it, correct?
yes,
Yeah.
but from the little I do know about the recording, it was that Max recorded it himself at their house that they lived in, and it was probably in their garage. And Z did the drummer. He did the drumming for the song, and Max did most of the instrumentation, from what I understand, and Quinn did the vocals. The track itself had very little tracks to begin with when it was handed to me to mix. So there was really only two microphones on the drums, at both 58s from what I remember, and bass DI, two guitars, I think, a vocal, and a weird guitar effect. And I think that was it. I personally always love listening. Well, I mean, I love it, but I also feel like it's mandatory to listen to the client's rough mix before you even start mixing it yourself. So that way you could actually see, like, oh, okay, they wanted some slap on their vocal. Oh, okay, they wanted this part to sound like this. So it's a really great reference point in general. So
it's a good way to like take like crucial ideas that the client had, and incorporating that into the final mix.
exactly, yeah. Just because, like, it would be insulting if I were to just like mix this as I would think it should sound, but I'm not respecting the client's wishes and creative desires. So therefore, that's why I would want to just, make it as close to the rough mix as possible, but also make it better than the rough mix, obviously. So that's why I always try to have it in the same session as I'm working on the mix itself. And as we were listening a little bit to the rough mix, we kind of hear that it's just a little bit more dead sounding, a little bit just heavier, as I would describe it. And then if we were to compare it to the mix that I have going on right here.
From the master.
That's true.
Brilliance.
I could do that as well. So yeah, generally what I did was just like make it sound tighter, more higher mid-range heavy, and
like higher fidelity overall.
Higher fidelity overall, yeah. But of course, in typical Sunday Mourners fashion, like, it wasn't all about just high fidelity to its purest form, like how we would have in modern rock recordings. Like, it's taking what they're heavily inspired by, in that the 70s New York rock scene, and just like everything else that's just come from it, from like the Brian Jonestown Massacre to just other bands that have this signature sound. So I just wanted to incorporate all that into this. And the last thing as far as like this mix goes is that I pretty much just had a couple plugins to kind of help bring it a little bit more to fruition. I had this Kramer tape, and I've been loving it mostly for width, to add just a lot more wideness to the mix. So that's why I always have it at a mid-side setting, so that way it could kind of bring out a little bit of that. And I also saturated everything as well with the flux that's in the middle of it. So that's pretty much like the heaviness of this plugin. That's what's mostly doing, just saturating and giving a little bit more push to the width of the overall song. And then over here we have this, again, this F6 plugin, just kind of doing some more of the shaping of the song in terms of its EQ and tonality of it. With this, again, just kind of like removing a little bit more of those like bass frequencies, and also rolling off some of the high end, just to kind of like give it more of that classic sound where a lot of those old recordings didn't really produce a lot, anything past like 15K. You know I got it so bad. And I got it for you. It's been a long time coming. You don't start it with you. You got me down on my knees. You got me down on my knees. You got me down. And it added a lot of character, I think, by rolling off that high frequencies in general.
Yeah, it's always cool like what that does to a song, because it does add like a different vibe to it.
Definitely.
What's his name? Rocky Angelini's buddy?
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah,
Turret.
Brian, he would do that too. I think he would roll off everything past 13K.
Something like that.
And
yeah.
I was like, bro, you're crazy.
Yeah, but if you listen to those Apollo Bebop recordings, they sound really great. Like,
absolutely.
Like I'm always surprised just like how great they sound based off of Brian's technique. So
absolutely,
it's great.
Yeah, when I listened to that, like one of his tracks that he was showing me, and he showed me that he rolled off that far, I was like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Exactly, really crazy.
It's a crazy trick.
Definitely.
It's so simple, but it's
effective.
It does a lot.
Yeah. And here with this song, all I did too was just kind of add this compressor right here. Essentially, this is my version of an SSL bus compressor, where it's literally just using this vintage VCA compressor, and it's in a pretty light setting as far as ratio goes, and even attack and release are not even that crazy as well. You know I got it so bad. And one thing I absolutely love is this soft clipping, essentially, in this distortion setting of this plugin. I think it's probably more of just like a placebo thing where it just kind of makes it a little bit louder. But I feel like there is some sort of characteristic that it adds as well when it comes to just mixing. But even with that, like, it's such a subtle change too, that like the drums kind of sound the same, but the vocals do get pushed up a little bit. So pretty much with a lot of the mixes that I tend to use nowadays, or tend to do nowadays, I tend to use this plugin as my compressor for the overall mix. And in general, while I'm mixing, I tend to have this multimeter going as well to just kind of hear and see kind of how things are going. As we can see, it's a pretty mono track, but yet like it really opens up when the chorus hits. So that was the goal of this, just kind of make it as big as you can in the chorus with as little as we have. So yeah.
And how about that analyzer? What analyzer section is that?
The analyzer section,
Yeah.
I actually don't pay attention too much to it. It's just kind of there, but that's what it looks like. I tend to not use this too much because of this this plugin already is already doing that. So that's why I try not to rely on this one too much.
Well, it's interesting to look at the tonal balance, like overall.
Yeah.
It's very flat.
Yeah.
Like, in general, you see most stuff is like curved, so it's like kind of rolls off the high end, and then there's a big bump in the low end, almost like a tilt curve, like a tilt EQ or something like that.
Definitely.
But it's very flat, which is interesting.
And we could even see like this EQ, which is this meter, is before the compressor, and then this meter is after the compressor. So we could even see the differences that compressor tonally kind of makes. We could see a little bit more action happening around like 150. And not as much, I think. So, yeah, pretty subtle differences in that. And then in this plugin, typically I had used this as more of a mono switcher before I had a controller to do that. So this was my way of checking to see my mix in mono. Yeah, and that's pretty much it as far as the song. So altogether we had 2, 3, 4, technically 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tracks to work with.
Okay, you still paired the drums up in a little bus there. It's only 2 tracks.
I did, and we'll even see that like I even like tried doing like some like saturation to it altogether, but I don't think I ended up using that. What I ended up just doing was just doing some more work towards the overhead and the kick mic, just bringing it out as much as I can.
Do you know where exactly they placed the microphones?
I don't, but like from the sound of it, like it doesn't sound super, I don't know, super close nor like super far into it. So it was in a garage, so like you could hear like the ambience of the garage, in my opinion. You can even hear the bass, actually. So it sounds like they were probably tracked at the same time as well. Yeah. Which is cool.
Yeah, very old school.
And then from there, pretty much what I did was just did some EQ to it. I did a huge dip. Was at around like 125 hertz, just to kind of control the kick a little bit, and left it pretty much flat. I wanted to retain the spirit of the song by respecting the influences that they had, which were like stuff like Richard Hell and like I think that there was even some stuff of like Foxygen and like just classic punk that like I really love. So I wanted to retain that the sound of that generation. So I didn't do a lot of EQing in that in this song in general as far as the main tracks go. And then it looks like over here I added a compressor to the drums to bring out more of the overall drum sound, which it brought out a little bit of the snare. At least just made it a little bit more equal throughout. And then over here on the bus, I added reverb to the drums to just make it sound bigger.
Which reverb did you use?
This is just the stock
Chroma reverb.
reverb on Logic, the Chroma reverb, and that's pretty much all it was, just to like make it sound a little bit bigger, more full. And then over here, I saturated the drums a little bit. Not a huge difference, but it probably just added something. And then I tried adding some more compression and spreading to it, but I didn't really do much. I didn't end up using these, so these are just off. And then over here, I have the kick drum going. As we could hear, like there's a lot of bleed coming in from the rest of the drums. And what I did with the EQ was just mostly to bring out a little bit more of the click. And there was like this really nasty like frequency, in my opinion, around like 40 or 50 hertz. It was more of like a weird woofiness of it. I mean, we can't really hear it in this setup because it's more of a subsection, but I ended up just taking that out a little bit. I also just added a lot more compression to it to just make it sound more aggressive. And then here I added just another EQ to bring up more of that section that, you know, just more of the kick and a little bit more of that click that you hear in the kick as well.
So this is a dynamic
EQ.
Dynamic EQ. Okay.
Yeah. So this is a dynamic EQ. This is called the F6 RTA. And it's a really great EQ that I use a lot for mixing, but also a lot for mastering too. And I found it really useful too. Just like tune, generally speaking, like whatever it is I need to just kind of surgically add or remove to songs. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like how the compressor adds like a lot of gnarliness. Like it kind of brings the cymbals out.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds crazier with the compression in.
Yeah. And I did automate a little bit, mostly for the snare hits in the song. Like you'll see over here going into it. Just like a little bit of more of a snap in the snare right there.
Yeah.
And besides that, that was pretty much it for the drums. This drum ambience is just the verb that we talked about on that overhead mic over there.
Yeah.
And then we have this bass over here, which this one did have a little bit more of processing going into it. It sounded a little too plain to my ears, I guess, when I first received it. I think they ended up recording this with a music master or like basically like a Mustang bass, and they're really great basses for their short scaleness and like just the general tone that they come out with. But I wanted to add a little bit more weight to the bass.
Ooh, nice.
So I added this bass amp that has more of like a regular Ampeg vibe to it. So that's why I ended up using, I just kind of boosted it, if anything, a little bit towards like the mid-range and top end of this. And as far as the EQ, it was more taking out like something that was just a little bit more of the too much body that was happening in the bass in general. So that's why I ended up taking out some of that sub and even some of that just general build-up that was there.
Can you go turn on and off the EQ and the bass amp, and we can hear what those two do to this sound?
Both of these at the same time?
Just one after the other. Wow. Yeah, it adds like way more meat to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Heaviness.
Yeah. And then to even add some more aggression to it, I added basically what's an LA2A with like a really fast attack and pretty long release. And generally, like I crushed it in a way where it just kind of brought out more of the pickiness of the song.
Yeah, it adds like some extra like sheen to the top end, like where the pick scrapes the strings.
Exactly, yeah.
It adds like extra focus on that.
And then lastly, I added this EQ right here, again with the F6. This one I was still hearing a little bit too much here in the general like subby area. So it just kind of helped like control it slightly a bit more. I could have done this with just one simple EQ, but I guess I just didn't at the time for some reason.
You're not basic, bro.
And the last thing I like to do a lot, I added some space to the bass itself to make it sound like it's in the room, because it was in the room with the drums. So I added a little bit of reverb into the bass itself.
Oh, cool. Why did you choose that again?
Mostly for it to just sound more live in the room, kind of like because the drums were recording with the bass live in the same room. So I wanted to kind of reinforce that it was in that case. So that's why I just kind of like added it back in just a little bit more so that you could actually hear that. And it does add to the live atmosphere of the song itself that it has. And another thing I love doing is adding saturation to bass. And that's what this last bus is doing. It really brings out a lot of the snap of the bass itself. So I'm always in love with using this saturation plugin. It's a soft tube saturation knob. It's a free plugin, and I absolutely love using it on bass and snare drum. So it's a very useful tool for that.
I'm writing that down so I can download it later.
Sure, yeah. And I've done so many creative things with that plugin too. Like some people have wanted really crazy distortions happening, and I just kind of crank that up, and I've used it on like reverse cymbals and vocals and what else? Even kick drum, just all sorts of sources that I've put this saturation in. Like it's more of like a parallel way that I've been using it. So it's a really great tool that just brings out a lot of character into a lot of cool things. And then after that, we just pretty much have the guitars. Like I said, there wasn't much provided to me. We had this guitar, Dano guitar, which just means the Dano Electric, Dano Electric guitars, the brand. Because Max tends to play that, and so that's what they use for this recording. And what we have here, just dry. It's pretty small in how it sounds compared to like how I mixed it later on. What I ended up doing was just kind of bringing up a little bit of that that mid section right there to just kind of give it a little bit more body. And took out a little bit of the harshness that was happening in 3K. And then what I ended up doing was I ended up delaying the guitar to the right side, because as we can see right here, this is panned to the left side, and I busted to a bus, and then I panned that bus to the right side so that way it could widen the guitar a little bit.
Oh, like the pan reverb kind of trick?
Exactly, yeah. And in this case, it was just because like this was the only guitar I was given. So it just adds
sounds so cool.
It adds a lot of space to the song. So I really loved how that sounded. And then we have a compressor to really bring it out to your face. Whereas like this sounds like the room, but like this actually sounds like the close mic, you know? That's basically the thinking behind this. And then again, I also saturated the guitar a little bit with that same bus that I had that saturation plug in for the bass. It just added a little bit more grit to it.
Yeah, more aggressiveness.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that guitar came out way different than how you got it.
Yeah. Yeah, and they did have these plugins on it that Max had on there, like a spreader. So like when I listened to the rough mix that they sent me, like I saw what he was trying to do, but like I felt that I could do it differently with different plugins. So that's why I ended up doing that process of splitting the signal between like the left and the right channels using a delay.
Right.
So yeah. And I remember that Max wanted the choruses to also pop out a lot more too. But I wasn't given anything else to make it pop. So what I did was I literally just doubled. I cut out this guitar a little bit and I just doubled it right here. And obviously that can cause almost like well, it could cause phasing, or it could even cause like just no difference in volume, just barely anything. So what I did was I slightly dragged it over so that way it's a little bit more delayed. And I also saturated it so that way it sounds a little bit more different too. And I also made sure to saturate the actual guitar itself rather than putting it on a bus. So that's just the regular guitar that was there already. And then again, just kind of did some EQ curves to make it sound a little bit more chunky. So yeah.
Yeah, that saturation's really aggressive on that one.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what adds to those records like from the 70s, is that they're being pushed a lot in the recording by the board or something that's saturating it very heavily.
Yeah, the tape.
Yeah, exactly. So something like that, I just wanted to emulate that sort of feeling.
So that plugin sounds great.
Yeah. And then as far as like other guitars that we had going on, we have this guitar that adds a very interesting flair to the song. They always joke around that it's the Day Tripper riff. So therefore, that's why it's called the Day Trip over here. Which is pretty much is that riff, you know? And then without...
It's very like squirrely, like a squirrely. Like I don't remember hearing that when I listened to the song.
Yeah, yeah. And then we got over here. So it's a very thick tone, but I felt like it was getting lost in comparison when the mix with the bass and everything. So that's why I decided to just kind of like add all these plugins to it. What do I do with this? I think this was a gate for some reason, but I can't exactly remember why. Or maybe I just left it because that's how they wanted it to have. And on this pedal board right here,
You use a Logic pedal board?
I did use the Logic pedal board. But as we could even see, I don't even think
Oh, so they're not even engaged.
they're not even engaged. So I just left that on. So let's just pretend that that's not even like on the chain at all, really.
Yeah.
And then I did put the guitar through a new amp, so that way it had a little bit more of a brighter sound. It did take out a lot of that like muddiness of the guitar itself. I did not use that reverb, and I did use this EQ right here to boost it quite a lot as far as the higher frequencies are in the song. And then a compressor just to kind of like even it out a little bit. And that's pretty much the process as far as like that guitar in general.
Can we listen to just that guitar without the EQ and the compressor, and then with it back on?
Yeah, of course. And like even like right there where it like really peaked out, I like the way that the compressor interacted with it to kind of like squish it. It brought out a lot of the twanginess of the guitar in that instance.
There's like some quack that disappears when you put on that EQ.
Yeah, exactly. And I think now looking at my cutting for this song, I think generally speaking, I did the cutting so that way the noise gate doesn't have to do the work. So it just sounded better for me to cut it rather than just rely on the noise gate for that. And then here we have the solo for the song, which is this distorted guitar, which by itself sounds like this. Do, do, do. And yeah, we could even hear that it's very DI'd. It's literally just a DI'd guitar. So I think again Max just like added this noise gate. I just kind of left it on there. And then there's actually something happening with this pedal board right here. And then we added an amp.
You turn that pedal board off real quick?
Yeah.
So it goes from clean to distorted with just
that pedal.
So the phase is it's clipping it.
Actually, no.
It's the treble boost.
There you go.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. And this one's not engaged. Yeah.
Okay, so it's adding the old school treble boost.
Exactly, yeah.
Nice.
And then there was an amp that was placed in front of it. Which totally changes the sound again.
It sounds like a metal amp.
And it's not, it's a tweed amp. It's a tweed amp going to like basically a Marshall cabinet.
Yeah, that's why it sounds like
metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The speaker.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, the emulated speakers.
Exactly, yeah.
And a 57 dead center of the cone.
Yep. And then as far as EQing, I just kind of boosted a little bit of the high end a little bit. And as far as this little bump right here in 800 to give it some more body, I guess.
Can you turn off the 800? I want to hear what it sounds with and without the 800. Just the 800, not the EQ itself. Yeah, wow, that's crazy.
It's a very slight difference in my opinion. But yeah.
Rarely myself, I rarely touch that area, like the 500 to 1K.
Oh yeah?
I should touch it more, because that's that's really where the mid-range stuff is.
Exactly, for a guitar especially, like it really does change the characteristic of a guitar when you're messing with that section.
Yeah, I've always been scared, because every time I change it, it drastically changes the guitar tone.
Yeah.
I don't like to do that much if I don't have to, but it is important. So that's good that you tackled that side of that guitar there.
Yeah, and with the last of the plugins right here, I guess, for the main channel, I added this compressor. Just kind of like evens out everything a little bit more. Again, sort of like slight changes, but that's really all that like mixing is just doing all these subtle changes for it to just overall be something totally different. And then to add a little bit more space to the guitar itself, I added this reverb to it. And then the main change for the song, or for the solo itself, is this saturation plugin, which, again, the bass and the Dano electric guitars are going to as well. So it's a big volume jump, obviously, but it's, again, mostly the saturation. That's what I was going for this plugin, just like basically making this whole thing into a fuzz. So.
Can you compensate for the volume change in that saturation plugin there?
Sure, let's see.
I meant like within the plugin itself.
Oh, within the plugin?
Yeah, does it have like a...
No, it actually does not.
Oh, wow.
It's basically just a big knob of like how much saturation you want.
Uh-huh.
And these saturation types are interesting. I'm not exactly sure what the main differences are, but they do have different characteristics when you do switch between them. Not
Interesting.
not noticeable here in this case, but it does happen with other instruments. So
Yeah.
yeah. And when they originally sent me this project, they had this backwards guitar happening. And they had it muted because they didn't want to use it. But I was like, you know what? That actually sounds really cool. So we kept it. I'm pretty sure it's still just a DI guitar, just doing a note. Yeah. And then all these effects that are happening just make it sound like vroom.
Oh my gosh.
And I want to say,
What in the heck is going on there? That's crazy.
that, well, for one, the tremolo is what's causing the panning from left to right.
Oh, you're using it as an auto panner.
Exactly. I tend to use the stock tremolo plugin in Logic as more of a panning rather than a tremolo, more often than not. And then, is it this? Yeah, there's a pedal here. I guess this tie-dye delay. That's sort of reversing everything. So if we go back to that. So there's a setting on this. I didn't do these settings, but Max just had this as is, and they muted it, and they didn't want to use it, but I was like, we should use it. So
Okay.
yeah,
So Max did all this backwards tape thing.
all this processing, yeah.
That's really, really creative.
Yeah, and then like when you play them together, like it adds a really nice, like cartoony nice of it. So yeah.
It adds a sort of chaos to, an additional chaos to that guitar solo. That's just like crazy.
Exactly, just going. And then pretty much the last thing for this song is just the vocals. Quinn really loves having that classic slapback delay. And I played around with a couple configurations of like how I wanted to process it. Sometimes I do slapback right like as a bus. In this case, I felt like it was a little bit better right on the master track itself. So that's what we ended up using. So this is the dry track itself.
So bad. And I got it for you.
I guess when I was given this track, it was already naturally overdriven too.
Long time coming.
Do you know how they recorded
You're
it?
starting to draw.
My guess was either using their Scarlett preamp, but Scarlett preamps don't distort like that. So, but Max does have a Universal Audio 610, and I'm pretty sure that's how they probably got this tone.
Okay, so just distorting the preamp on that.
Yeah, and using a 57 as a vocal mic, or if not a 57, I think they had a 214. So yeah, and I only know this just because of like pictures that I've seen of them like just recording like on Instagram or something. So
Yeah. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, pretty much just like using a compressor to just kind of even it out.
You got me down on my knees. You got me down on my knees. You got me down on my knees.
And it doesn't sound like there was a pop filter used.
Yeah, I could tell.
So that's why I had to scoop out a lot of that right there.
You got me down on my knees. You got me down on my knees.
And then the slap comes from this Kramer tape right here.
I can't get straight. My eyes are fake.
And then to add some more width to the song, I added this reverb,
In the state.
which really just adds to the psychedelicness of the song in a way.
I see you standing there. A long face, blonde hair. Oh, you got me more. You got me jonesing for more.
So it's pretty heavy-handed in that reverb that it's relying on in that. And then these backing vocals are just Max just reinstating that I can't see straight kind of part.
I can't see straight. My eyes are fake. I'm sitting deep.
And then again, just kind of like using this reverb right here for his backing vocals, just kind of panning it in a weird place.
I can't see straight. My eyes are fake.
Just kind of making it wider.
I'm sitting deep. Hey. My eyes are fake. I'm sitting deep.
So I can't really hear on that side. So you have his dry vocal there, and then you panned reverb.
Correct.
Okay, to
Yeah.
that side.
Yeah, just to make it just a little bit more wider in general, just bigger. And ultimately, that's pretty much the whole mix. Just those tracks all together.